April 6, 2024, Lincoln Field Financial State. It's the night 2 main event of WrestleMania 40 as a man hopples to the ring basically on one leg and a chair in hand to protect his friend in arms. And regardless of other shenanigans or what I could only describe as Avengers movie cinematic drama, the man ends up taking the bullet and being the sacrifice that wins his friend the WWE Championship.
See, in this story, the man is no more than a contributor, a side character to another man's story and another man's monumental title win. Even though he had just contributed to the end of one of the longest championship reigns of all time, in one of the biggest matches of all time, the man walks out of the jam-packed 60,000 person stadium while those 60,000 people cheer on another man's championship win. Wrestling is a very fascinating sport/show or whatever you want to call it because of simply that, what I just said. Professional wrestling is essentially a sport presented as a show, or maybe a show presented as a sport. Essentially a show about a show where you have these characters where they have narratives, they struggle and they face hardships. And just like any other show, professional wrestling has characters. Above all, they have main characters. And to really get a grasp on main characters, I don't think there's anyone who epitomizes what a main character is more than a character from one of my favorite shows, Son Goku. Dragon Ball Z is essentially a show about an alien child who was sent to Earth during the destruction of his home planet. And that child then will go on to grow up on Earth, becoming the protector of it and making a bunch of friends along the way. A cast of colorful characters and friends and family that would help fight alongside Son Goku to protect Earth and the people they love. But the thing about the dynamic between Goku and his friends and family is everyone knew to always count on Goku. He would be the one that everyone can always count on to be the sole savior of Earth and essentially the strongest out of the cast. Except that one time where his son became the strongest and the protector of Earth, and then he kind of stopped and went on to go do whatever this is. We don't talk about it. But essentially the dynamic was the same between Goku and all his friends and family, except for one person, except for Goku's biggest rival, Vegeta. Vegeta, who actually was one of the people that Goku would have to protect Earth from, he was different because he's the only one out of the cast who could ever match Goku in strength. Essentially, it was Goku, Vegeta, Big Gap, and everyone else below. But even with Vegeta time and time again closely rivaling Goku in strength, he could never become stronger than Son Goku. No matter what he tried, how hard he tried, he could never be the #1 guy. And this is the case for the man we're talking about today. This man isn't Son Goku, he's Vegeta. He's not the main character in WWE, he's Seth Rollins. If you don't know who Seth Rollins is, you either are just getting into wrestling or you completely missed all of WWE in the 2010s. A man who has essentially stamped his spot as a part of the Mountain Rushmore of this era of WWE. Seth Rollins has essentially been the workhorse that you could always count on to give you an amazing match or an iconic moment. When anything goes wrong and you need people to step up, you could always count on Seth Rollins. And his reputation that he's built as a workhorse has came with notoriety, a bunch of it, but just not quite all the notoriety he wanted. See, Seth had a struggle. No matter what, no matter how hard he worked, just like Vegeta, he could never be the guy. He could never be the main character of WWE. There's two people that Seth Rollins has essentially been the Vegeta of. The quintessential #2 to these guys' #1, the Vegeta to their Goku. The first one, Seth's own metaphorical brother and the person he started this journey with, this was Roman Reigns. Roman is a wrestler with a complicated yet fascinating story, with maybe one of the greatest comeback stories I've ever seen that could only be rivaled by like one person, and don't worry, we'll get to that. Roman and Seth would both start their WWE journey working in a developmental subsection of WWE called FCW, which they would later be moved to NXT, a higher version of developmental for WWE. It's a lot to explain and confusing, don't worry about it. But it was here where Seth Rollins' talent and ability would be shown and showcased, so much so to the point where he became the first ever champion for the NXT brand. Roman Reigns, meanwhile, on the other hand, not so much. It was obvious that Roman is still green, and if you don't know what green means, it basically means someone is still an amateur pretty much. You can tell that they're new to this. When it came to in-ring work and the actual wrestling, and especially when it came to promos, Roman just wasn't quite there yet talent-wise where he needed to be. But what Roman had going for him was the fact that he looked like a #1 guy. And sometimes in WWE and wrestling, that's essentially all you needed. It was obvious though that Roman had something. There was something in Roman Reigns and the potential there, but it was obvious he would need more time before he could ever become the main character of WWE. With the talent being seen of Seth Rollins and the potential of Roman Reigns, they will both be paired up in a group with another also talented wrestler, Dean Ambrose, and they would make their main WWE roster debut in 2012. This was The Shield. a group of mercenaries originally hired as security guards for CM Punk, but then would go on to act on their own and terrorize the whole WWE roster. These three friends battling off against WWE as a whole just gave this us versus the world mentality that people gravitated to, because it was essentially them versus the world. For 2 years, they would raise their stock even more, defeating prominent talent after prominent talent, and then eventually legends. These guys were on top of the world, all until... See, you've always got to remember the plan. The plan of this whole group and this whole thing was for these three guys to become the main focal point of WWE. And with the previous main character of WWE, John Cena, starting to show up less and day by day step down more from his role as the main character of the company needed a new main character now. And you would think with an action like this, it would have set up to be Seth Rollins. But instead, it was actually Roman Reigns. With the Shield now broken up, this gave all the reins for Roman to become a solo star. And now there was nothing between him and the WWE Championship. But see, remember what I said about Roman Reigns still lacking in being green? This was still the case. The thing that made Roman so good in the Shield was he was the quiet type who didn't talk, but essentially the muscle of the group. The guy who could fight off multiple people at once and perform these near superhero level feats. But what WWE didn't realize was once you take the muscle of the group out of the group, now he has to stand on his own. Now he needs a personality. And the one that they would give him was just horrible. Multiple promos around this time with the corniest lines and the corniest sayings ever. And it didn't help that Roman Reigns still wasn't where he needed to be in ring wise. He wasn't good at telling a story in the ring yet. He wasn't good at selling the moves of his opponents and making them look like they hurt. And this was something that the internet and wrestling fans would catch on to very quickly. And essentially, this would cause the crowd to turn on Roman Reigns. So much so that when he would win the Royal Rumble in 2015 and the celebration would be accompanied by The Rock, it would still all result in boos. There was this pushback from people because they can clearly see what was happening here. They could clearly see that Roman Reigns was being bred as a new main character, and to make it worse, the same type of main character that John Cena was, who Cena himself would originally experience hate on those levels during his time as the main character because of the same corny promos, the same repetitive formulaic wrestling matches, and the countless repetitive Superman type wins. What Roman was doing was starting to look eerily similar to the Super Cena era of John Cena. And with the rejection that Roman would face as the main character, his big monumental WWE Championship win would instead be handed to Seth Rollins. And you would think that this would essentially make Seth Rollins the new main character of WWE, but it's just not how it works. With Rollins being champion, he was treated more as a secondary protagonist and more of like an antagonist to the company. While yes, Rollins was surrounded by a group called The Authority, and would most of the time be in the main events of these WWE Championship matches, it was obvious that WWE still had their focus on Roman Reigns as the main character of the company, the unproven prospect of the company. Seth would suffer an injury that would cause him to end his WWE Championship reign prematurely, and in his absence, Roman Reigns would finally capture the gold. Still as a main character rejected by the audience, but a main character nonetheless. And any chance that Seth Rollins ever getting a shot at being the main character of the company was looking like it was starting to fade, all until one fateful year. 2019. To give full context, going into 2019, Seth Rollins was coming off of one of the funnest Intercontinental title reigns in history, and that especially was so prominent due to 2019 and 2018 being the start of the dark ages of WWE. Starting in 2018, the product would come just unwatchably bad to even the most hardcore viewer, and one of the only saving graces and diamonds in the rough would be Seth Rollins and his reign as the Intercontinental Champion. This momentum and just godlike work by Seth Rollins throughout 2018 would basically make him the hottest person in the company, and he would carry that momentum in 2019 and win the 2019 Royal Rumble. But not only was his Intercontinental title reign a prominent part of this once again rise of Seth Rollins, there was a deeper layered motive behind pushing Seth to the top once again, and that has to do with the man we just talked about, Roman Reigns. Just months before this, Roman would announce that he would have to walk away from wrestling immediately due to the leukemia that he had been fighting once again coming back. And this real life issue would be something that would without a doubt affect the company and affect the top star scene in the company, especially the main character scene. So now essentially with the main character being forced to walk away from the show, a new one would have to step up. And the only person that would be available at the time, miraculously, was Seth Rollins. And it was at this moment that it seemed like Seth would finally get what he had always worked for. Seth was finally about to become the main character of WWE. And his gateway to doing that would be for him to have to slay one of Roman's toughest rivals. He would have to slay the beast, Brock Lesnar. And at WrestleMania 35, that's exactly what Seth did. beating a man that most times not even Roman Reigns could beat, and essentially claiming his spot as the new main character of the company. And at this point, what could go wrong, right? And the answer is, oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Remember how I talked about 2018 and 2019 being the start of the dark ages of WWE? Well, this would be something that everyone would be affected by. Bad writing across the board and character assassination on so many levels to so many characters. But I don't think it hit anyone worse that year in 2019 more than Seth Rollins. Because essentially Seth had went from that beacon of light and the only watchable part of an unwatchable show to just another part of what made the show unwatchable, and would come off as essentially the worst type of annoying babyface. That same type of corporate force narrative that would plague the runs of John Cena and Roman Reigns was now starting to repeat itself with Seth Rollins. And a bunch of things on top of that didn't help, like Seth Rollins' rants on Twitter or this match. But essentially the whole run and the whole title run would cause Seth to go from one of the most beloved in the roster to one of the most hated.
I'm not stupid, I hear you guys. I know plenty of you are thrilled that I lost to the Fiend at Crown Jewel.
And he would start to get those same crowd reactions and hate that would mirror the run of big dog Roman Reigns. And essentially, that's where the plug would be pulled on the attempt of making Seth Rollins the main character of the company, especially with the return to wrestling of Roman Reigns, pretty much making the whole thing an easy choice. And for the next coming years, Roman would really take the mantle better than he had ever in the previous years, transforming into the tribal chief character. This character who would demand acknowledgement from the crowd and protect himself in his championship with the empire of his family, the bloodline. And for years, while Seth would put up amazing work, it would all be in the shadow of Roman Reigns and his, at this point, multi-year WWE Championship reign. And it was at this point that WWE would need a hero to knock the king off his throne. They would need a person to end a multi-year WWE Championship reign, and they would need a new main character to take the role that Roman Reigns had filled for years. And at WrestleMania 38, that hero would emerge. The second man that Seth Rollins would play Vegeta to, Cody Rhodes. Remember when I said that there was only one man that could maybe rival the comeback story of Roman Reigns? Well, Cody Rhodes was that man. Originally coming from AEW, he would experience quite the same reaction and the same hatred that Roman Reigns would experience back in his big dog days. Cody would experience this hate in AEW. AEW was essentially a company that prided itself on being more of that indie-centric alternative and reconnecting with a more hardcore and passionate section of wrestling that WWE had neglected for years. And the type of wrestlers that AEW fans gravitated to tended to fit that mold of the alternative, edgy, and more brash type. And all of that was essentially the opposite of what Cody Rhodes was. Cody was essentially a white meat babyface in a space where that seemed outdated and fit more in the WWE space than a gritty, indie, alternative space of AEW. Essentially, imagine babyface PG John Cena trying to survive in the Attitude Era. This is how ridiculous Cody looked with the type of gimmick, presentation, and booking he had, with his lowest point and most egregious being his Cody solves racism promo, which, if you haven't watched it, go check it out. It's probably one of the greatest laughs that was never meant to be a great laugh. But essentially, Cody pretty much had the perfect gimmick and presentation, but in the wrong company. And when Cody would show back up in WWE, it would essentially be a match made in heaven. But for Seth Rollins, this was essentially the match made in hell, as Rollins would essentially be the guy used to prop up the next main character of the company, and he would have to do that by losing 3 consecutive times to Cody Rhodes on 3 different big occasions. Once again proving Seth was good enough to be a part of the main stories and main focals of WWE, but just not the main character. And essentially, we're back to where we started this video off, as this would be the most evident during WrestleMania 40. With Cody Rhodes winning the Royal Rumble, ready to avenge the WWE Championship loss of Roman Reigns the previous year from WrestleMania, his Rumble win and essential rematch with Roman would be vetoed by The Rock, which I guess you can do that now, in an attempt for the two cousins to face off with each other instead in the main event of WrestleMania for the championship. And to make sure Cody's Rumble win wouldn't go in vain, Seth Rollins would step in to fight alongside Cody Rhodes and protect the company from essentially the evil overlords and the corporate corrupt final boss. And the fight to stand up to the corporate corrupt bloodline would be successful, but with the cost of Seth losing essentially everything. Cody had finally done it. He had won the championship that his father never could. But when it came to Seth Rollins, it was just another story that he played the supporting cast in, as he would have to literally watch the main character mantle be handed to another man, with both of those men essentially being picked over Seth Rollins. At the time of me recording this, Seth is currently recovering from a shoulder injury that would, just like in 2015, cause him to end his world championship reign prematurely. During a run that essentially tried once again to make Seth Rollins a focal point of a show, and just like in 2019 and in 2015, it would once again be plagued by mediocre writing and an untimely injury that would end the whole run. I have no doubt in my mind that when Seth retires, he will go down as a bona fide Hall of Famer with multiple memorable and iconic moments in WWE. His run with the Shield will go down as one of the best introductions and rookie runs of any wrestlers of all time, and his heist of the century will go down as maybe the best cash-in ever, and his matches and reputations as a workhorse will without a doubt immortalize him forever in wrestling. But for some reason, it seemed like Seth always got the short end of the stick when it came to potentially making him the main focal point or the main character of the company. Essentially, it just never really worked whenever they tried to do it with Seth Rollins. A lot of people even say his career has mirrored the likes of Triple H. In terms of Triple H, while being a prominent figure in wrestling and a legend, never really being the guy or the main character of the company. And every time they would try to make him that, it would not go good. Always good enough to be the main antagonist to the main character, but never the main character himself. And this is sadly what I think has plagued Seth Rollins, as essentially he's become the Triple H of this modern era of wrestling. And you can look at that as a bad thing if you want to, but to me, all that means is essentially you've become as much of a legend to your era that Triple H was to his era. And in a business where most wrestlers you see barely even make enough ways to be notable on a trivia question, or even never reach the main event of WrestleMania or a world championship win, I think what Seth Rollins has accomplished is pretty damn phenomenal compared to the average wrestler.